Okay, thanks, Andy. Okay, moving on. So this webinar will be an our activity. So for the objectives, we have three sets. So first is share the methodology and outputs of the IFVC project under the Transforming Tourism Value Chains. And then second is to discuss opportunities and challenges based on the policy recommendations and guidelines for monitoring plastics in the tourism sector. And then third is to provide an avenue to share ideas and good practices that can be implemented to reduce single-use plastic product dependence in the tourism sector. So I hope everyone is curious to learn more about how the transforming tourism value chains develop these policy recommendation and guidelines to reduce our plastic in the tourism sector. Okay. So for our agenda, we have a presentation from our project officer, Ms. Andrea Go, to be followed by the key findings of the design thinking workshop and technical working group meetings to be presented by Ms. Zarina Panopio from WWF Philippines. And lastly, we have the policy recommendation and guidelines to address single-use plastics in the tourism sector to be presented by our senior consultant, Mr. Jonas Dumdum. And then after those presentations, we'll have an open forum and then we'll close with some reminders for our participants with us today. Okay, so I hope everyone's ready and now we can swiftly move forward to the first presentation. Okay, so we have the Driving Innovation in Plastic through the Transforming Tourism Project to be presented by Ms. Andrea Go, the Project Officer of the Transforming Tourism Value Chains Project. So Andy, you may now take the floor.
Hi, Kim. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today and joining us on one of our last two remaining webinars of the year. So my name is Andy, and for those who may not be familiar with the Transforming Tourism Project, I will be giving a brief background and focus on what we've been doing to address SUPs in the tourism sector. So in the next slide, since 2017, the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project is implemented globally by the United Nations Environment Program and locally by the Department of Tourism and BICEPSD. And we've been assisting tourism businesses and working with local and national government units towards transforming the sector, of course, into resource efficient and low carbon operations. So the project is funded by the German federal government through their International Climate Initiative program, and of course is being implemented in 3 other developing countries aside from the Philippines. So we have Dominican Republic, Mauritius, and St. Lucia. In the next slide, you'll see that the project has been aiming to transform the Philippine tourism value chains by reducing GHG emissions or the carbon footprint of 3 major tourism sectors or areas with high resource use. So namely accommodations, or these are your hotels and resorts, meetings, incentives, conferences, and events, or MICE, and cross-cutting their food and beverage operations or F&B. So how exactly are we doing this? In the next slide, you'll see that we have a national roadmap, which was actually published in 2019, and I think is still applicable very much today. And it is a strategic document aligned with the SDGs with a target of 30% reduction of GHG emissions in the tourism sector by 2030 to what do you call this? With sub-targets on food, wastewater, and energy. So what you see before you are the 4 main systemic solutions, and each solution has their own suggested main and supporting activities with targets that converge and aim to reduce these emissions. And by minimizing food waste, improving solid waste management, and of course, wastewater treatment. And of course, last but not the least, getting rid of problematic single-use plastics. And of course, increasing clean energy. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But in order to monitor the progress towards these targets and solutions, the project developed a tool called the Resource Efficiency Tool, which tracks an establishment's GHG emissions from scopes 1 to 3. So these are your directly and indirectly controlled emissions. And this tool is being used by almost 40 businesses in the Philippines. and we hope to reach out to even more businesses before the year ends. So eliminating the use of SUPs in hotels and MICE is really a key part of the roadmap. So for example, our RE tool allows businesses to track how much SUPs and reusable plastics they're purchasing per month. And to make it easier for them to identify which SUPs are truly problematic or not. So in the next slide, we also conducted a campaign to phase out problematic SUPs last year with DOT Save Our Spots program. And the campaign provided recommendations and tips for hotel staff, managers, and guests to reduce SUPs in line with COVID-19 protocols. And the campaign also seeks to promote already existing initiatives of the establishments addressing SUPs. And we saw that these establishments were already providing their guests refillables instead of disposables, or using eco-friendly, reusable, or compostable items such as bamboo toothbrushes and wooden combs, paper bags, metal straws, and glass bottles. So aside from the campaign, the project actually also took it a step further by seeing how businesses and other tourism stakeholders can co-create solutions in using design thinking. So in my last slide, I want to say that specifically this mini project of sorts began last year in 2021 and aimed to assess the use of problematic plastic products related to the provision of F&B services and the co-creation of solutions, which will be expounded by our speakers later on. So we tapped WWF Philippines to help us have a deeper understanding of the problem, root causes or drivers, what is the magnitude of the problem, the hotspots, and to help us develop solutions based on a design thinking process. So we did this by engaging suppliers of F&B products, tourism businesses offering F&B services, consumers, and even digital service providers with waste technology applications. So the expected outcomes, as you can see on the screen, are to have increased capacity of key stakeholders of the tourism and food value chains to implement design thinking to reduce the plastic footprint from the provision of F&B services, and of course, to have enhanced digital infrastructure and skills to collect data and monitor their performance in the adoption of circularity in the use of plastics related to the provision of F&B services. So with this, I will end my short presentation, and I look forward to hearing from our speakers on the results of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, for providing a brief overview of the project as well as the sort of an opening for the methodology and the background of the IFVC project. So thank you for that. And then just to acknowledge some of our participants, because I've noticed that um, a lot of our participants today are fairly new to the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project. So again, thank you for those who have provided or given their time to us to attend this webinar. So I'd just like to mention some of the participants that we have right now. So good afternoon from to Aklan Tourism. I think we have a couple of representatives from the Aklan Tourism office. So good afternoon. And then we also have representatives from the La Union Tourism offices. And then good afternoon po. Thank you for taking the time to attend this event. And we also have some hotel and tourism establishments. Yes, so yeah, hopefully everyone will get a lot of information, useful information that can also be adopted to your operation. So yes, thank you everyone. So again, for our participants, kindly include your organization or property name to be followed by your name so that we can also address you later on. Okay. So yeah, for information, if you have any clarifications or inquiries about the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project, kindly send us an email on the email on the screen. We'll be happy to welcome any inquiries from you. Okay. So for our next speaker, we have the key findings of the design thinking workshop and technical working group meetings to be presented by Ms. Zarina Constantino Panopio. So she is the national lead coordinator for the WWF Philippines No Plastics in Nature initiative. So WWF network approach to stop plastic waste leakage in nature by 2030 through elimination of unnecessary plastics, doubling reuse, recycling, and recovery, and ensuring the remaining plastics is sourced responsibly. She started her career as a corporate training specialist in 2011 before transitioning into environmental conservation work in 2013. From then on, she has been involved in various projects related to forest protection, biodiversity conservation, solid waste management, and entrepreneurship. She has a master's degree in environment and natural resources management, major in coastal resource management, and a bachelor degree in psychology. And when not working, she can be seen sleeping, talking with plants, or watching Netflix. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome Ms. Zarina for the presentation.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. There, let's try the video. So,
Good
hello.
afternoon, Zara.
Good afternoon. Okay, so next slide, please. So what has been the journey for WWF in terms of doing or analyzing what are the challenges and also the solutions that are needed for the tourism sector to address plastic pollution? So in our journey, we conducted design thinking workshop. So it's a 3-day workshop wherein we really work with the tourism sector to understand what are the problems, what are the challenges they are facing in reducing or eliminating unnecessary plastics and ensuring that the necessary plastics are managed properly. From the results of the design thinking workshop, we consulted this to technical working groups with from the tourism sector, from the relevant government agencies, and also from the Department of Tourism. So next slide, please. So the next slides will be sharing more on what are their findings in terms of these design thinking workshop and technical working group meetings. So this is a summary of like what are the problems that are being encountered or challenges that are being encountered by our tourism sector in terms of addressing plastic pollution. One is it's one that there's a need for us to for them to eliminate unnecessary plastics in their operations, but there's also a need for business efforts to comply with LGU ordinance and communicate with consumers. So meaning it is important that before they eliminate unnecessary plastics, the LGU should already have like an ordinance on what are the eliminated or what are the plastics that they should be eliminating, and possibly like providing already solutions on how they can like replace these plastics, or what are how they can communicate it to the consumers, because it is important that when they implement it, the consumers will understand that this is in compliance with what is being pushed by the local government that they are in. The next one would be definitely there's this difficulty in shifting to plastic alternatives, and it is important to like provide who are the possible providers of the plastic alternatives. And most of the time the tourism sector, they would depend on their suppliers. And of course when you shift to like plastic alternatives, there's a need to invest, and that's also something that most of the tourism sector or the businesses in the tourism sector are having difficulty with, because of course we are still in a pandemic. Businesses are still recovering in terms of their operations, and these kinds of investment may not be one of their priorities because they still want to recover economically. Of course, I mentioned already the pandemic has also been a challenge to them, and it would be great that to also provide recommendations on where to bring the COVID related waste, because apart now from the plastic waste or the biodegradable waste that they are generating, there's also now an added burden on where to bring their COVID related waste. Other results or other challenges that they share during the activities is that there's not enough system in place. So right now most of the businesses are focused on just having it collected, just having always collected, and not really more on thinking on how do we segregate or where do we bring the recyclables. But right now, previous slide please, they're still focused on we should ensure that the waste are being collected. Also, there's also not enough motivation for people, because the businesses, if they venture into sustainability, what would be like the motivation for them to participate? If they want to like be a sustainable business, apart from the values that they will instill into the consumers, they are looking for possible support or like credits for them, so that they get to motivate not just themselves but also the employees of that business. And then the last one would be not enough coordination within and amongst the sectors. It is important that the sector, with businesses within the same sector, are actually coordinating within each other, so that they get to learn best practices, and then also learn the things that they should not try given that it has been experienced by other businesses in the same sector. And also important to communicate with other sectors such as the government agencies and also the local government unit. So next slide, the next slide really show that every we this is something that we really want to emphasize from the different activities, is that everyone really wants to contribute and have been taking the first step. So I think we need to recognize that businesses are trying their best to be sustainable. It's just that we need to provide them support so that they can continue on with their plan or continue on with their efforts for sustainability. So next slide, it's really more on discussing what are the solutions out there. And these are the top 6 solutions that came out from all the activities that were implemented. So we asked them, how might we help address plastic pollution in the industry or the tourism industry? And we were actually looking for data and technology driven solutions. But most of the solutions that we gathered are not technology driven. So maybe something that we can actually get from here, if there are already solutions coming out, given that um, we are at the third year of the pandemic, maybe some solutions are already being applied or being implemented by different businesses. So the first one, their number one would be government policy, and they're very particular on a national policy, because some businesses would have different branches in different areas, so they would want to have a national guideline that can be easily understood, so it is easily implemented. So they want it at a national level, so it will apply to all businesses wherever you are in the Philippines, and then it's also easy to apply and easy to understand. Next one would be industry alignment on sustainability. They were asking for like if there's a possibility to like group the sustainability officers or to designate a sustainability officer in the company, and then the government agency can kind of convene all the sustainability officers and update them about like any news or any solutions that are being tried in the industry, and how they can better work or push for sustainability in their respective businesses. The next one would be the alignment of industry and government on implementation of sustainability. Like before, they mentioned really the importance of national guidelines on how they can promote sustainability in their sector. And then the next three would be more on like business operations. How do they need to like engage suppliers and also employees for sustainability? Because definitely they can't do it on their own. And they need all these elements for them to push for sustainability. The next one would be consumer awareness. So it is important for us to help them in terms of how do we communicate sustainability to our consumers, and why is it important to do that. And of course, the last one would be on recognition, or like having the certification for sustainability and incentivization. So it is important for us that for them it's actually secondary, but it would really be a good factor for to have like this kinds of certification, so that they get to motivate themselves in taking that direction for sustainability. And on the next slide, I would just like to share that all these solutions or all these findings have also been being integrated in the WWF Philippines No Plastics in Nature initiative. So we're working with cities, with businesses, and pushing for global policy or extended producer responsibility. So we're taking into account all these inputs and kind of integrating it and pushing it with our partners, particularly in the hotel, restaurant, and cafe industry, or the Horeca industry. And with that, I look forward to your questions. If you have any other questions, next slide. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm Zarina and Zarina Constantino Panopio, and I'm the national lead for NPIN, and you can just reach out to me for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Za. So very also informative inputs from the methodology and output of our IFVC work package. So yeah, just like to siguro like a short icebreaker, since we also have, I believe, representative from LGU's tourism sector, from the hotel establishments. So going back on this solutions, shortlisted solutions, can anyone siguro choose the solutions that you are most likely to opt, or you are currently implementing right now? So yeah, just choose based on the situation that you are on. So parang ano po yung mga priorities nyo, or yung mga actual efforts that you are currently conducting right now in terms of beating plastic pollution in our tourism sector. So anyone can type in any insights here. I could also start, since we're coming from the environmental organization. So definitely we are pushing for more consumer awareness, since we've identified this as a gap. There are a lot of good environmental initiatives that we have here in the Philippines, but there are also a lot of consumers who are not conscious, or who are not aware about this effort. So we're trying to also bridge those gaps in terms of providing more sustainable actions in our country right now. So yeah. So yeah, I guess we could also continue this later. So if anyone has any inputs about your current efforts that you're doing right now, kindly type in and then share it with the rest of the participants as well. Okay, thank you. And then yeah, so moving on to our second and actually last presentation. So we have the policy recommendation and guidelines to address single-use plastics in the tourism sector, to be presented by Mr. Jonas M. Dubdum, our senior consultant for the Transforming Tourism Value Chain project. So aside from being the consultant for TVC, JM is also working as a consultant under the Industry Solutions Consulting Sector for Nomura Research Institute, or NRI Singapore Manila branch, and is a lead consultant for the NRI Manila Sustainability Service. So Jonas also co-hosts the Sustainer Rumble podcast, the first ever podcast that tackles issues on sustainable development in the Philippines. He serves as a representative of the podcast to the Stakeholders Chamber for the Sustainable Development Goals, or SCSDGs, of the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA. Jonas is also a corporate and environmental sustainability practitioner, a registered chemist, and a climate reality leader. He is also a 2022 Island Innovation Ambassador, 2022 European Climate Pact Ambassador for the Philippines, and a member of the Society of Sustainability Practitioners and Sustainable PH. So without further ado, let's move. Let's give the floor to Mr. JM Dumdum. JM, glad to have you here.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I understand that we're about to close the week. you know, but we still have a lot of learnings that we want to share with you this afternoon, and we thank you for that. So um, we would like to ask for a few minutes of your time to talk about the policy recommendations for the IFBC project that was conducted sometime last year. And what we really wanted to point out is that when we talk about policy guidelines or policy recommendations, we have to be a bit more legalistic and a bit more straightforward. But of course, you know, having those concepts in mind, we also have to make sure that there's like a smooth flow or a smooth guidance transition into everything. So the first thing that we needed to do when we had their consultations also for policy recommendations is to really identify who are the stakeholders. And we identified three key stakeholders for policy. And this is really based on our national laws. So the main basis actually of the law, I mean, of policy here is the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act. But we also had to consider guidelines coming from the Department of Tourism and any tourism-related laws, as well as the needs of the stakeholders on the ground. So in short, it's not just government that needs to have policy recommendations submitted to, but also with the tourism sector. And we identified it in three ways. So, the main stakeholder being the tourism stakeholders, followed by the local government units and the national government. Next slide. Okay. To prepare for the solutions and eventually the policy recommendations, we had to go through five different phases. And this is kind of like, well, initially the idea is to have a step-by-step process. It didn't have like a timeline in place, but eventually it was recommended that at least we could have a suggested timeline. So each of the phases correspond to a year. So phase one would basically be 0 to 1 year. Phase two would be 1 to 2 years, and so on until you reach phase five, which is like 5 years and above. And what you see here in the slide is that when you start or you prepare first with your journey into the guidelines and the recommendations, first thing we really need to see is the word baseline. The main reason is that if you cannot measure or you cannot have a starting basis for anything that you want to do in terms of creating like a management policy or a strategy for wastes, or even just creating ordinances or or modifications to national policy, it becomes very, very difficult to determine how do the tourism stakeholders actually contribute to this kind of situation in addressing single-use plastics. But of course, it's not just about the baseline. It's also about trying to introduce solutions that are already on the ground, particularly the ones that are digital in nature, followed by engagement and also some research about how to be more sustainable, particularly in plastic wastes. And to be more specific, actually, because of the EPR law, I have to really address this as single-use plastic products, not just necessarily plastics in general. Then we move to the second phase, which is more of, you've already addressed the baseline issue, then you look into how do you measure KPIs and how to start expanding your presence in the sustainability space. In response also to the consultations that we had in the design thinking workshops. Then we move to how to better engage with the people that are in charge of government in implementing projects that are related to solid waste. And then we go with expanding even further to more stakeholders on the fourth phase. And then lastly is really to promote and to continue what you've already started in the first four phases. Next slide. Okay. So, in terms of the tourism sector, it's relatively well, it's summarized here relatively easy, but to be honest, it's quite difficult if each phase would not be followed in step by step. And what we started here is, again, similar to what we did for the solutions preparation, is really about to inform people that okay, you need to talk about this right now, and to start talking about how to be more sustainable in the first place. So that includes the measuring, that includes the baselining, that includes what's really the standard to determine if you're sustainable or not. And you follow it up on the second page, second phase with um, meetings and industry association engagements, so that everyone would be in the same line as you when it comes to implementing or eventually implementing something for the tourism sector specifically. Then you look into building opportunities from your immediate stakeholders, or your suppliers, or through your employees, or your clients or customers, um, to kind of speed up the effort to become more sustainable and to reduce plastic wastes. And then again, the fourth phase, you look into the monitoring and progress to see if the first three phases have worked. And then if ever there needs to be an adjustment, you can adjust it relatively quickly now at that point. And then lastly, you share the best practices, not just for individual hotel or restaurant or events organizing facility, but really about like the town or the city that is showcasing good practices on single-use plastics. Next slide. Oop. Sorry about that. That's supposed to be local government, but local governments have actually a very big power when it comes to single-use plastics. If you read the context of Republic Act 9003, or the Solid Waste Management Act, it is the local government unit who's really responsible for the implementation of the law and to reduce wastes. So we made it clear at this point that, or at any point actually during the whole discussions, that LGU should be highlighted as part of this process. And again, it has the same feel: baseline first, and then explore the KPIs, not just through the tourism offices, but local tourism offices, but also through the other departments of City Hall or the Municipal Hall. And then kind of expand the conversations further into the third and fourth phases, and eventually integrate the recommendations. Okay, next slide. Oh, okay. Hold on. Kim, I think you skipped a slide. Could you just exit first and then go back? I think the local government slide actually was gone. So that was correct, actually. Yeah. Apologies. There would have been a technical difficulty there. If you could just highlight slide 23
Oh, got it.
on your deck. Yeah. Sorry about that. Technical difficulty, guys. It's the Kim.
Hold on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Putting the slides now.
Yeah. So
Is this it?
yeah. So this is the correct slide actually for local government. So again, it's about the baselining and the reporting, followed by determining the policies, or tweaking the policies if you already have one, and establish KPIs for the tourism sector, and then integrate those strategies and talk to the stakeholders, you know, most especially the hotels, the resorts, and the events organizers, and then work beyond your LGU, because waste is not on a problem with just one LGU, but involves other LGUs. And then lastly, you showcase those practices locally and nationally and hopefully globally. So that's basically the point of the local government. The previous one that I mentioned was actually national government, which is a bit more complicated in scope. Now, the question here uh, is there an impact uh, to this policy recommendation due to COVID-19? We actually had to account for COVID-19 as uh, a measure, I guess, because you have to now be extra careful when it comes to patients that have not just COVID-19 probably, but also future diseases. And I think Andy and Kim will be on hand to distribute the specific details of this document. It's a very long read, I assure you. Um, but hopefully, if there's any LGU that would be willing to look into our policy recommendations, we'd be very, very grateful, and we'll be also on hand to answer any questions. So with that, I'd like to end my presentation and hopefully open the floor also to any questions that you have. And if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about after this webinar, you can contact me through Facebook or LinkedIn. I don't have it's just my name, so it'll be easy to reach out. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, JM, for providing the results on the policy recommendation and guidelines of the IFBC. Okay. Andy, can you highlight or pin JM and yourself so that we can move with the Q&A? So again, to our participants here with us in Zoom, kindly chat if you have any questions for our speakers right now. So unfortunately, Ms. Za from WWF won't be able to continue this Q&A. But yeah, hopefully our remaining speakers would be able to answer your questions. So yeah. Okay, just to start lang siguro, can I have JM? So this is actually one of the questions from our registrant. So um, what is the first step for businesses to determine what their targets are in addressing single-use plastics?
The next step ideally is really to know how many or how much is your single-use plastic volume before you set targets. I mean, if you recall earlier when Andy was presenting about the details of TVC, there are actually set percentages already that's recommended. So it's easy to implement if you already know how much you're actually using. And you have to do it within a certain amount of time. So let's say 1 year. Ideally, it's a 1 year. But if you could do 6 months, 6 months is okay. Just not like 3 months because that would be too short of a time. So if you can get it to like within a year of your baseline, then you can start measuring or determining your targets.
Got it. So again, to anyone who has questions, kindly chat it. So Andy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, if I can add, actually, what JM said was pretty accurate. Kasi what's lacking really right now in the country is the baseline. We don't have enough data to determine how much the sector is actually producing. So we really need data, among other things. But yeah, having a baseline for the whole tourism sector, which our resource efficiency tool can provide and contribute to, would really be the first step to go. So yeah, just affirming what JM said.
Yeah, just chime in a bit also, no. If you look at literature when it comes to single-use plastics, what they would give you is a number about 163, 162, 164 million. But it doesn't indicate what are those single-use plastics specifically. Are they sachets? Are they plastic cellophanes? Are there your Lazada, Shopee packaging containers? So the data in a way has like has a number, but it's not really the baseline numbers that we need. What we do need is an accurate assessment of what kind of single-use plastics are being used in your locality or in your business. Um, the RE tool has that separations, I believe. I've seen it before. It's really, really nice. Uh, and it would be, helpful for you to really pinpoint which one is the most, uh, I guess, the most number of single-use plastics that you're using. And from there, you can really see, okay, bawasan natin to, bawasan natin to, bawasan natin to.
Also, to add on, I remembered during Zach's presentation that before the local government units implement like phasing out of plastics, there should be a prepared alternative or like suppliers just for the consumers to have that kind of option. Since, I wouldn't say like we're really dependent on plastics, but it's hard for the consumers, especially in the rural areas, to shift agad-agad like abruptly. So yeah, I'm just taking note of that parang aspect of shifting away from SUPs. Okay. Um, Anyone else who have questions before we continue with the questions that were given by our registrants? Okay, I guess we can continue. Siguro, let's see. Oh, there's one question. So since there is a lack of incentives or recognition for both government and private sector, how can government agencies and the private sector can be incentivized to integrate more in-depth programs in addressing SUVs? Yeah. And anyone from you guys can answer this one.
I'll let Andy go first.
Okay, I think I can answer for the private sector. Because that's always been our experience with the private sector. Honestly, I feel like well, I think what they feel is that they lack recognition of their initiatives, regardless of whether it's in SUPs or addressing SUPs, having a good, for example, composting program and stuff. So if we can further upscale whatever incentives that we have that's already being applied in one area and apply it to the private sector, then that would be great. For example, La Union Green Tourism Enterprises Program, that's the certification program of course, the La Union provincial government. So I think that's a really good place to start. If we can maybe tweak their program a bit and upscale it to other provinces or states, then that would be a good starting point to further incentivize tourism businesses in the addressing SUPs and other sustainability initiatives.
I'll respond on the part of local and national governments. The issue of solid waste has actually been a lower priority for some time now. Had it been for the EPR, had it not been for the EPR law, we wouldn't be talking about single-use plastics again. Actually, the law has been in force. The main law, the Solid Waste Management Act, has been enforced for 22 years, and yet the main issue of just establishing your own MRF, your material recovery facility, has been a major issue. It's less than 30% of all barangays in the Philippines have MRFs. In addition, we have noticed that some LGUs are just resorting to asking a private contractor to haul of their waste and then send it to the landfill for processing, which is not good practice. I understand that some municipalities or some cities may not have that capacity to have a fully functioning MRF, but it's actually in the law that requires you to have an MRF. So the challenge for local and national government is really to just implement the law. And if you need to partner with the tourism establishments to create MRFs within the vicinities of the tourism establishments, that would be good. That would be a good start. to encourage people to segregate even just to two things. So your biodegradables and non-biodegradables, that's already good. Although ideally you separate into four parts. Your food waste, biodegradable waste, your recyclables, your residuals, and then your special waste or hazardous wastes. That's detailed in RA 9003. So in short, for this to really work, the dynamics between tourism stakeholders and the private sector, they really have to work together and address the issues that's lacking, to address the law itself, one, and two, to promote your own localities or your own areas to be more responsible and to be more also resource efficient actually in plastics.
Just to siguro add a question on that. What are the factors that can increase the capacity of the LGUs to implement their waste management system?
Okay, that's a very good question, Kim, and I'd like to respond first to this. The main incentive is actually a reduction of your hauling fees for garbage sent to the landfill. You can sell. I mean, if you get for example, the recyclable wastes, you can sell them to whoever will be able to buy them, and that improves the revenue of the LGU itself. Second, if you incentivize businesses to use alternative sources of packaging, chances are there will be businesses that will be in or individuals that would want to set up a business promoting alternative plastics. That's additional revenue for private sector businesses, and also with increase in tax revenue for government. And then, of course, to have a distinction, or to create a distinction, or to reach that fine point that, okay, you've already achieved this, and you can say that we've managed single-use plastics or eventually eliminate single-use plastics, then that's also a source of communication and promotion to tell people that, hey, this town is green.
Right. So thank you for that, Rayam. And then, okay, we actually have a question for Zach. So I guess anyone from our remaining two speakers can also respond to this. So the question is, can you give one example or case study of a successful IEC campaign on plastics that we can adapt to the tourism sector? Yeah.
Andy, baka meron.
Sige, ito na yung ipipitch ko. Pero this is a good opportunity to bring back our campaign to phase out problematic SUPs in the sector. So to give more information about the campaign that I presented, we actually launched that in 2020 during the pandemic. So the key messages that told hotel staff and managers and hotel guests to reduce SUPs, we had to adjust that to national guidelines and also to COVID-19 protocols. So I guess it's just a matter of siguro listening to our experts both here in the Philippines and also abroad, and to localize whatever recommendations that they have. Kasi there's always room for adjustment so that whatever solutions or recommendations can be applied will be a bit more accurate for the parang locals here. So that, like for example, we translated the key messages to English, Tagalog, and Ilonggo, so that more and more people can parang understand the key messages that we're trying to provide, right? So those kinds of simple things, I think they will go a long way to be able to really spread out the message in reducing SUPs in the tourism sector. And it can definitely be adapted not just to the tourism sector, but also to other sectors as well. So yeah.
Okay, Jonas?
No, nothing to add. Actually, Andy already said everything that needs to be said for this question.
Thank you. So Next, we actually have a question from our participant right now, recognizing Miss Diana Putba from the provincial government ENRO. I believe this is from La Union. Correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Diana. So the question is, one of the pressing issues with regards to plastics is the microplastic pollution. So with your organization or where you work, Jonas, right now, or Andy and PSubsD, or with the TVC project, can there be a possibility that your organization might conduct research on microplastic pollution in local areas or other tourism areas? Yeah, that's a question.
Baka you can take this question, JM. Right now, I'm not familiar with any studies on microplastics at the moment. Baka you know.
Well,
then.
okay. In terms of microplastics here in the Philippines, there has been little research, but globally there is. It's actually linked to the amount of plastics that's in the oceans and in the rivers. There is a study actually that was released this year, yeah, that said that the Philippines is the number one source of riverine plastics in the world. It's a Dutch study that was published around April or May this year, and it's troubling because the reason why you have microplastics is because you have single-use plastics that's been exposed to the sun and exposed to water for a very long time. So in short, nakababad sa tubig, and some of that plastic gets leached out, in and becomes microplastic. The impact is that if you do, I mean, if some fish consumes those microplastics, it eventually ends up in the bloodstream, and if you do eat that fish, that eventually also leads to your bloodstream. Um, and there is a direct correlation between single-use plastic products and microplastics in rivers and oceans. So in terms of the local side, we would be, we would be happy to have a look in Nomura, or perhaps in we can have also this conversation in my personal capacity, because we can talk about this in the future. But this is an interesting topic. I believe that perhaps in the future TVC would have that capacity also to conduct that study and see how things go. Because let's just say that if you don't want to eat tilapia that had some microplastics, yeah.
Who would want that? Okay, just to share po, Miss Diana, before we also conducted a project on circular economy solutions to reduce marine litter, and then on our closing event we went to Denhugan Island, and then the staffs there, or the researchers there, also shared their research and findings in terms of marine plastics, or the plastics that ends up in our coastal. So actually, the Danhugan Island also faces an open sea, so a lot of the waste they collected in their coast are from our neighboring countries like Indonesia, Malaysia. So you can see paper or plastic bottles that is not actually from the Philippines, but from our neighboring countries. So that's also another factor that we have to consider. Na yes, we also do contribute in the marine litter in the marine litter issue in the Philippines, but there are also some aspects that those marine litter are also coming from not homegrown waste, but from our neighboring countries. So yeah, if you would like to know about their research po on marine pollution, you can check them out. They are from the Philippine Reef and Rainforest Conservation. So yeah, they also do conduct research on marine litter in their island in Danhugan, Bacolod. Okay. Thanks, Miss Diana. So any other questions from our participants?
I guess there's none. Kim.
Yeah. Okay. There's actually one interesting question here. I guess this would apply to JM.
Mhm.
How can MSMEs and large hotels and resorts alike can apply the design thinking towards waste management in their day-to-day operations, given their busy schedule? So more practical approach in terms of implementing these solutions that you guys have provided earlier.
Actually, that's a question that can be addressed to Andy because Andy could probably conduct this. But I too can also conduct this, but for most likely I'd be doing this for more, the large hotels. Because it's more complicated with the large hotels rather than the MSME establishments. For the MSMEs, I believe kaya yan ni TVC. Kayang-kaya na yan ni TVC.
Yeah, kasi in our experience, it really, well, not naman takes a lot of preparation, but you can really tell that when you're working with the large hotel chains, they really want to cascade not just to one branch, for example, but to other branches as well. So, syempre, it takes a lot of preparations. But again, I think design, based on our experiences in the design thinking workshop that we conducted last year, design in a gist, design thinking is really more focused on the user, like solving the day-to-day problems of the end user, so that you can form better solutions that are better targeted for them. So it really helps you to be able to ask the right questions. What is their like motivations? What like, and it really deals with more of feelings, emotional capacities to be able to get to the right solutions, so that yun, parang hindi siya generic recommendations na o gawin mo to, gawin mo to. No, it really asks more questions about the end user. So yun, we can send more information about the design thinking process, because I admit I honestly just learned about this last year, and I think there's still a lot more to learn about design thinking. But I believe that it can be applied to both MSMEs and large hotel chains. So yeah, we can send that in the post-training materials as well.
So I guess that's a good wrap up to this Q&A. We'll do provide everyone here, especially if you guys provide the feedback for this event, so we can have your email addresses again and then send you the materials that we've gathered in this webinar. So again, thank you JM and Tuza earlier for being here despite your busy schedules to be able to provide information for our tourism stakeholders. This mini short activity. I actually forgot this earlier. Can we take a photo up with everyone here? Because I've noticed a lot of the participants we have right now are fairly new to the TVC project. So if anyone can open their cam and then provide your very nice smiles, we'd be happy to document this. So okay. Yeah, I'll do the screenshot. So if anyone is comfortable opening their cam, please do. We're very happy to see your faces. Okay. Hi, good afternoon po ulit. We're a small group, pero yeah, hopefully we provide everyone with the information for our tourism sector. So okay, here you go. Okay, I'll do the count po. 1, 2, 3. Another one. 1, 2, 3. And last one po. 1, 2. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll try to send the screenshots po. So, meron kayong, I don't know, like souvenir. Okay, so here on your screen is the feedback for our event right now. So kindly provide us your insights or recommendations for, actually, yeah, recommendations for, I don't know, the sustainability of our tourism sector and how this webinar went. And then encouraging everyone to provide to answer this feedback so that we can email you guys the materials used earlier. And then on the bottom part of the presentation, we actually have one last remaining workshop. This is actually like a style workshop for the hotels, resorts, conventions, event places, the MICE businesses that we have here in the Philippines. So we have the sustainability reporting and action plan implementation training. So hope to see again the hotel businesses here that we have right now. So yeah, we'll also send the links on this feedback forms and registration forms in the post email that we'll send later on. Okay. Andy, can you also chat the feedback link, please? Thank you. Oh yeah, here you go. Thank you, Andy. Okay. So again, we have also announced this last week during our certifications webinar. So the Transforming Philippine Tourism Value Chains project will be conducting its culminating event, the closing of this project, this November 8 to 9 in Novotel, Manila, Quezon City. So if you want to watch this online, I guess we have hybrid setup, I believe. So you can also register to this link so that we can also send the details on your email addresses. Okay, so again, if you have any questions or inquiries about the project or the activities that we do, please email us at tvc4relcd@gmail.com. And then also like us on our Facebook page, since we also post our webinars there and other materials. So you can look us at Transforming Tourism PH. Okay. So that's it. Again, thank you for everyone who attended this webinar and hope you have a great week and ahead and then stay safe. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you po.
Thank you so much.
Don't worry po to those who haven't or did not access the evaluation form. We'll also send that link later on. Thank you, everyone.